You've spoken to her. Just in your own words, can you explain what on earth has been going on?
Suella decided to seek the advice of a trusted colleague on a draft written ministerial statement that was due to come out tomorrow, much of it which had been pre-briefed. She sent that, unfortunately, with a personal email, and that is technically a breach of the rules. She's decided to front up and say that she's broken the rules and therefore she must resign. And I want to be absolutely clear, if she hadn't made this mistake today, she would have been continuing in the government, continuing to serve as Home Secretary. There's absolutely no question of this being an attack on the Prime Minister as such. And, this is really regrettable. I wish she was staying, and I very much hope the Prime Minister will feel able to bring Suella back in the new year.
So she leaked a confidential government policy paper to another Tory MP. I think some people are reporting it's John Hayes. He let everybody know that this was the case, and then she's had to resign because she felt it possible to break the confidentiality of government and basically leak some of the most sensitive, market-sensitive information that is in this government.
Sam, that's very much overplaying it. There's absolutely no question of this being market-sensitive whatsoever.
So Downing Street are wrong?
It's a written ministerial statement in relation to immigration. So she felt that because she'd used her personal email, and that is technically a breach of the rules, that she should go.
We were told that it was market sensitive because it would have an impact on the Office for Budget Responsibilities numbers, and that feeds through into growth forecasts. That's why it was market sensitive. That's why she had to go. So you have Suella Braverman leaking market sensitive information.
I wouldn't describe it as a leak. I can understand the chain of logic with the OBR there, but what I would say is that all of us as ministers work with colleagues on the backbenches and indeed of all parties to consult parliaments on their opinion, parliamentarians on their opinion. It's perfectly normal to engage parliamentarians. We do it all the time. What isn't normal is to use one's personal email to send an official sensitive document. But as I say, the reason it was official sensitive was because it was a draft written ministerial statement. It was going to be laid tomorrow. Much of it had already been briefed out. So people should not allow themselves to think this is a highly sensitive document. It's a document that was going to be public tomorrow, much of which had been briefed. So, we do routinely engage with parliamentarians of all parties. I think to call it a leak is unfair. Suella chose to take the advice of a trusted colleague. It's a mistake, and as a result, she's gone.
Now, one of the big issues between Suella Braverman and the Prime Minister has been immigration policy. It's been a very difficult subject for this government because, of course, there were promises made in 2019 to reduce the amount of migration overall. Do you support the 2019 manifesto commitment to reduce immigration as Suella did?
Well, I, of course, stood on that manifesto, but I am going to seek to continue as a government minister supporting the government. What I would say is it's very important when we talk about these matters that we get the figures right. So I hope when we look at the OBR's numbers in due course, I hope those numbers will reflect immigration as it actually is.
Sorry, just to pass what you're saying, sounds like you disagree with the decision to junk the 2019 cap but want to keep your government job.
Well, Sam, the reality is I'm bound by the ministerial code to represent government policy. Now, we have to be realistic about migration. Suella was taking a good, strong line on the boats crossing illegally. That's still got to be dealt with. And Suella was taking a good, pragmatic line on the seasonal agricultural workers scheme, which, again, I support. And also, of course, we stood on a manifesto commitment. But it's not for me to preempt what the Prime Minister's migration policy is. I'm clear what was in the manifesto, and I'm clear that as a government minister, when a decision is taken, as I'm required to do under the ministerial code, I will represent that decision.
Another area that is quite contentious involves an area that you're directly involved in is Northern Ireland. Now, it struck me today that one of your colleagues, David Jones, was expecting the Prime Minister to say that she would prevent any amendments to the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, that she would make sure that she stood up to the EU in a tough way, but the Prime Minister didn't quite give the reassurances wanted that she's going to face down the EU. Is there some concern that the Prime Minister isn't going soft on Brexit?
That's absolutely not the case, no. And I can speak to this, obviously, very directly in my role. We all want a negotiated outcome. We're very clear that we want a negotiated outcome, but to get to it, we've got to have the right atmosphere and tone to what we're doing. And to get into a negotiating tunnel, we've all got our red lines. The EU, of course, would prefer that we stop the progress of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. We need to talk about the jurisdiction of the ECJ, but we need to really not emphasise those at the moment, get into the negotiation, solve the technical problems, and then towards the end, we'll deal with our red lines.
So she hasn't just run into a row with the ERG?
No, she absolutely not. She came to the ERG, she went to the ERG yesterday. I attended and didn't speak, but she was very strong. She enjoyed the overwhelming support of the room.
Now, you are a prominent figure, I think it's fair to say, on the right of the party. You're now a government minister. And the government that you serve in has two supporters of Rishi Sunak and two of the great officers of state, and Jeremy Hunt and now Grant Shapps, and Liz Truss as Prime Minister enacting Rishi Sunak's policies. How do you feel about that?
I'm very comfortable that the Conservative Party's always been a coalition of Conservatives and classical Liberals like me. I mean, I like to think of myself as being on the free market left, but that's for another occasion. But the point is, our party is a broad church, and it should be a broad church. It should be the broadest spectrum of the centre-right. And I'm very happy to see people in government who are talented and can deliver for our constituents and for the country. I'm pleased and proud of the people we have in office.
But a bit of you must reflect on, or maybe even regret, the enormous U-turns that have been made over the last few days. You think growth is a big priority. The policies which resemble a bit like austerity 2.0, coupled with big tax rises, can't get you out of bed in the morning.
Well, the reality is what gets me out of bed in the morning is making sure that we're a government and we're a party that can deliver for the public. And that part of that delivery is being on a trajectory to make sure that we can pay people's pensions and healthcare in 20 years' time. But if you look at reports from the Office for Budget Responsibility, the Fiscal Sustainability Report, if you look at the National Audit Office's report into the National Insurance Fund, very boring documents but very important, we've got about 20 years to solve a problem of growth, having enough resources to meet those challenges. And this is why I'm so keen to stick by Liz Truss. She understands that we have to go for growth or we're facing decline and serious problems later. So for the sake, getting out of bed in the morning, it's for the sake of normal people getting their pensions and their healthcare in 20 years.
You can't tell me Liz Truss is in a strong position, though, can you?
Well, it's obviously an extremely difficult time right now, but I'm very, very clear that this Prime Minister is the one we need to stick with. And in particular, in the votes later today, we've ended up with a confidence matter on the table. It's extremely important that no one seeks to punish the government in these votes. You know, this is a very sensitive and difficult time. The best way forward for the public is for everyone to just row in and help this Prime Minister stabilise her government and drive forwards together.